Professionals don't only apply for job descriptions they want to do, they apply for organizations they want to represent. Today on the Twid Show, what is the present and future of employer brand marketing? If it wasn't already apparent, it is now in 2020. Organizations, you and what you represent is a hiring story. Today on the Twid Show, a weekly interview series about building better organizations, we're going to talk about just that. What is an employer's story and what is its representation in relationship to hiring? To do that, I have Matt Gilbert, who's the Chief Creative Officer at Bayard Advertising, and Robin Dagostino, Global Lead for Employer Brand at SAP. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to share a little bit.
It's important. Can we start, like, not to go too in the weeds, but that even the concept of employer branding, that is a phrase that's evolved a ton. I wonder if, like, we can talk a bit about how you at your organizations even use that phrase. And Robin, given that it's in your title, like, how does SAP, what does that mean? What does employer branding mean at SAP?
I mean, it's a great question. So just to give you a frame of reference, like 4 years ago, before I joined, I was recruited to come to SAP. I've always worked in marketing and communications. And even myself, I was like, what is employer branding? What do you mean by that? But, it's increasingly more important that we match who we are as an employer with who we want to be, so we can get those prospective candidates to see themselves. And employer branding to me means joining. It means belonging. It means hopefully that ideal employee talent stays with us. And you could do that in many different ways, but it boils all down to the question of why your company over another company. Why should I invest my entire career, right, at your organization versus another? And to someone in employer branding, we define this using the word EVP, right? And that stands for employee value proposition, the real reason why somebody joins. And that is like your complete offering of key talent, hoping that they will join you, that they're going to give you their best effort, that they're going to speak well even after they leave you. And it's essentially asking that question of why a highly talented person would choose to work at your organization than another. Because let's face it, if you have the right person, if you have the right team, your company or organization can do anything. Anything is possible, and you can achieve all your visions and strategies. And it's just an exciting time for prospective and current employees to look at employer branding. And what that essentially boils down to is your messaging, as I just mentioned. It's your advertising, it's your communication strategy. It's really about meeting those critical skills and hiring locations that you're trying to attract for through employer brand marketing and attracting those candidates.
Matt, obviously, Bayard, I mean, you are among those real industry purveyors of this. Do you guys have a working definition? Has it changed? How do you talk about what EB is?
So I'm totally in sync and aligned with Robin. We're speaking the same language. We think about things, we look at the world from two different lenses. We look at it from a candidate's perspective, thinking about how they can think, how they can evaluate, how they compare. We use the term candidate empathy. So we also look at it from another lens, from the perspective of the employer, of our client, the organization. And what we're always looking to do is find points of alignment, find points of meaning, find ways to actually create value through processes, through experiences that people have, whether they're already employees, whether they've never even heard of you. And then we're developing strategies, really a broad range of them. But ultimately, like Robin said, we are trying to help our clients, they're our partners, in build business success, build competitive advantage, build comparative advantage, using the tools, using the resources that Robin mentioned, and even adding a few things on that we're looking to build, like transcendent value proposition, where we go beyond. We're really trying to create value through these processes.
I think of it often as like making sure people know they want to work for you even before they know they can, that they've already registered in their brain, that's a place that I would work, or that, I like what they've stood for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a journalist, we're a news organization, we cover technology, and so we're very used to, at some point, people rolling their eyes at new phrases that get trotted out, and I'm always interested in the journey of phrases, and I wonder if we could talk a little bit about like employer brand marketing, why it's not nonsense, or like why it's not like this other phrase trotted out here. It's been around. I wonder, like, if either of you, maybe Matt, given Bayard's work, like chart us a little bit the journey of where employer brand marketing came from. Why did this become so important, and why does it continue to grow?
That's a great question. The etymology of this goes back to marketing. It goes back to a couple of researchers. I think they were based out of the UK that was looking at ways that companies were trying to make contact, communicate, inspire, influence, and they coined the term employer brand. I think it's about 60, 70 years old. And today it's getting so much more attention. And not only today, but really this has been going on for the last 10, 15, even 20 years. I think there's a lot of factors that influence that. Strange quirk of me. I went to business school as an undergraduate, thought I was going to be an economist, almost worked for the Federal Reserve as a junior economist. So I think about these things in a kind of left-right perspective. And as we saw more competitiveness in markets, we saw more companies going into technology, we saw more people entering healthcare, we saw gaps, we saw changes, sea changes of geography of where people were living. And we all needed tools and techniques to not only find people, drive volume, but also to find really talented people who share our values, people who have the same work ethic or have the future version of that. When we think about how organizations grow and succeed, it's a future state. So we're always looking forward. So employer branding became the phrase, the catchphrase, the euphemism. I don't always love the term, because sometimes when we're talking to Marcom and people from that side of our client's house, they're thinking of it as the same thing as what we're doing corporately, and it really has a lot more to do with one-to-one, personalized, humanized communication to individuals that have very specific checklists around careers, around future state goals, around communities they want to be part of, how they want to collaborate, how they want to grow. So I don't love the term employer brand. I wish we could all kind of come together, have a big meeting of everyone that's a practitioner and say, okay, can we come up with a slightly different version of this? Is it the same thing as launching a new sneaker brand? Well, not exactly. Is it the same thing as marketing? It uses the tools of these things, but it's not exactly the right. We should have a big vote for, can we come up with a future state of what employer branding's definition, label, moniker should be.
The constitutional convention of this. Robin, you said one of my favorite phrases, the employee value proposition, and I've loved how that centers it on the employee's journey. You mentioned that you've come to a role that's somewhat new at SAP. I also chart from my own reporting the rise of this phrase tied to the war for talent we talk so often about, when starting first with software roles, but certainly continuing to expand out. A class of professional, highly sought after, that it becomes, the demands have gotten higher. We don't just care about what that job description is. We're seeing a generation of employees that are even willing to take a shave on salary if it's for an organization they want to stand for. Are those some of the concepts that you talk about? Like, maybe share a little bit about the EVP, the employee value proposition journey for SAP, how you're talking about that, how that's evolved.
Yeah, we're actually in the thick of it, to be perfectly honest with you. And going back to what are the qualities of an EVP and what makes it successful is it needs to be true to who you are as an organization, but also what is the type of talent that we want to come to SAP, to consider joining SAP. What are their happy drivers? Like, what motivates them? And then what is our overall kind of, what does our employees think? What is truly who we are as an organization? So we've spent the last, number of months surveying our employees, looking at this, interviewing our leaders, aligning with our people strategy, benchmarking it against Universum and Gartner and many different other studies, and and then looking at the external talent survey as well, to all boil down to our distinct positioning. And we're actually in the exciting phase of the creative process right now, which I'm super excited about, for what is going to be our tagline, right? But at the end of the day, it has to be authentic. It has to be true. It has to be our mantra that not only is for external talent, but for internal talent, that everybody's like, yes, that is who we are as an organization. So our current one is bring everything you are, become everything you want. The idea is we are very much, we welcome diversity and inclusion. We're very inclusive of a company and organization that whatever you have, whoever you are as an organization, whoever you are as a person, whatever demographic you are, whatever beliefs you have, come to SAP and then you can thrive. You can work at SAP within the organization. You can work globally. You can work, for a brand, because we are a B2B company that supports a number of our, companies and organizations that we represent. So you have so much opportunity, and that's what we wanted to articulate. Having said that, that tagline was a mouthful. It's extremely long, and it didn't, it wasn't that short and snappy, and it wasn't as scalable. And in order for a brand to be successful in this space, it's got to have scale. But to the point earlier made, is it's got to be personalized, and being able to deliver something that's truly relevant to the right talent is so critical in the success. But going back to your question about employer branding, I think you as an economist, Matt, you know this, like, it reduces the cost of hire if you have a strong employer, right? It's, job seekers are going to come to you more often. You're going to get more quality candidates. And to your point earlier, is that job seekers are going to accept a lower salary if they believe that it's a better company to work for, which shows you the value of this organization. I think that's why it's been prospering or getting much more attention over the last few years, even though it's been around for, 70 years. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was. I want to turn to what you alluded to, Robin, in metrics, but just to pull out one thread you had there that I love. One that we see consistently, this is not just a talent attraction, but a retention strategy.
Oh, very much so. And thriving, too. Mm-hmm. You want that person to be promoted. You want that person, to succeed, whatever the vision of success is.
That's well said. And like a related point that comes to mind when you put it like that I've had conversations about. If you want to make the comparison to like marketing qualified leads, is it like a sales funnel journey? Mm-hmm. What you come as you mature is you actually don't necessarily want to wantonly expand how many leads come through. In fact, you're trying to qualify. You want, in fact, fewer better. You want great matches. The idea being you only want work that is going to be successful. And there's an employee journey that's similar. You don't actually want everyone to apply. You want those who have a better, more accurate view of an organization that says this is a fit for me. That should, as you're kind of alluding to, Robin, might save time, but also we love that metric of length of tenure. That might employer brand marketing improve length of tenure because you're going to get better fits.
I love the talent magnet. Maybe that's what we should call it, because we not only want to attract, we want to repel. We are here for we want very specific type of talent. So maybe that should be being called employer branding.
I love the talent magnet. So let's take a moment then. You Robin, you've like alluded to a couple, but talk some about the metrics that you put in this basket of like employer brand marketing works or has done something for us. These are the kinds of things we think about. We've touched on some, but could we kind of talk through some others or even dive into a couple you mentioned?
Yeah, and I'm sure, Matt, you can share some too. I mean,
sure.
We know that the average candidate, at least for SAP, goes to 18 different sources before making a decision. So they're truly doing their research, rightfully so. It's a big decision where you go as an employer. And I think the world has changed, right? To take a step back, that like you used to, if I majored in, I don't know, because we're a tech company, so I majored in engineering, right? And granted, I'm not an engineer. I majored in economics too, Matt. So
awesome.
Couple economics. All right, we'll get into that.
Awesome.
So, you would think like, okay, I majored in engineering. I should work at a tech company. That's just where I should go. But then it changed to, I want to work for the coolest company, the one that has the best reputation out there, right? And then it changed to, okay, well, I need to stay within my job and role and follow that through. But the world's changed because you can do engineering at any company. You could work at a retailer for engineering. And then it sort of changed where I want to work at the company that's got the coolest culture, right? Gives me free food, a rock climbing wall, whatever those crazy things that you see out there. But now I think with COVID and this pandemic is that people are more looking for secure employment, right? And that stability. Not only, okay, can I get an in, but will I have the high future earnings to be successful, whether I stay at your company or go at another one? I think that's what's so interesting in how the world has changed in the space. I don't know if you guys agree or what you think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, a lot of the metrics, especially before COVID, were focused on how do we reduce a cost, increase an efficiency. And what we're seeing now is how do we increase or how do we improve a global sense of purpose, a stronger sense of happiness, really happiness in all the ways that you could possibly define it. So what we're seeing really for the last 5 or 6 months, but this has probably been undercurrenting for the last 2 years, is to move away from the things that we can cost per click, cost per application, the kind of standard things we can all tell that are not necessarily creating a better environment, a better community, a stronger culture. And the things that we are looking for, they're a little bit harder to measure quantitatively, but we're working on ways. One of my favorite things when I started this field was looking at this financial term called net present value, which is how you take a current investment today and try to figure out what that might look like 10, 15 years from now. We're trying to do some of the same things today for candidates, and this is a little bit on the attraction recruiting side, but it also has tremendous impact internally, and say, okay, if we were able to do something like that, what can we do today that improves, makes better? People want to stay here. People want to grow. Mentor. People want to become coaches. There's all kinds of data that we're seeing around that. So we're looking at metrics that they don't do well in spreadsheets, but they do really well when we look at improvements in collaboration, improvements in creativity, improvements in innovation. We see tremendous improvements in things like employee referrals. We love to share things that we like. So when we see an organic increase in employee referrals with nothing else done, it gives us a little bit of a measure of the health of that employer brand. So there's a lot of things that are, I mean, they're not wildly unconventional. It's just an unconventional way of looking at these things that we've always known and say, these are probably a lot more important people today than they might have been 5, 10 years ago. It certainly is with younger generations that are kind of entering workforce, and they're forcing everyone to rethink and question everything. So we have to develop metrics for them as well as people my age, which are a little bit different.
It comes to mind, we could back our way into so many other metrics, the net promoter, the net employee promoter score metrics that both of you touched on or made me think about. For so long, it felt as if, particularly larger employers, the bet was like, just stay safe, just be stable and stay out of the way of big political issues. And I think we're seeing this range where now employees, particularly a next generation, very much want stance. I'm picturing the American Airlines, you can wear a Black Lives Matter pin, these responses that not making a decision is in fact making a decision. And how do you want your employees to think or represent your brand? And every metric we're talking about, if you want time to fill some of the standards, or you want length of tenure, or you want higher net promoter score, it seems like it's going to be increasingly tied to what are we willing to stand for as an organization, and who do we then want to attract. And I love what you're saying, Matt, that like these are we have some of these metrics, but they're also kind of evolving pretty quick.
They are. Yeah, they really are. And then we have to come up with a few new ones too, because we're all using a very different yardstick today than we did a year ago. And we'll probably use a different way of evaluating our own career development and growth a year from now, 2 years from now. So some of those kinds of metrics probably haven't even been invented yet. And it'll be for people like myself and Robin, and perhaps even you too, to help lead the way and say, how can we look at things that are helpful not only to us in talent acquisition or employer brand, but how does this help the CFO? How does this help the CMO? How does this help a C-suite? How does this help shareholders ultimately? That's where we try to kind of think about creating value backwards and we're seeing some pretty good success for the companies that are kind of sharing into this vision. It's a little out there, but it's starting to work.
Mm. We're coming up on time, but a couple things I want to touch on before we head out. One, I apparently have two near economists, so I feel like we have to.
Strange mix, right?
It might, it might come to mind for folks. How much do big macro trends in the economy impact how important employer brand marketing is? Can I say, hey, unemployment's high, I don't really need to care about this. People need jobs, or is employer brand marketing something that like kind of runs under or around those trends? Do you think about those big macroeconomic trends, or are they almost noise relative to building an employer brand?
I would think we both do. So there is a little bit of a separation between active recruiting and building employer brand for a long term or further, really across a landscape. So what we have, especially because we work with hundreds of companies in different markets, is we see some are clearly struggling in certain industries that were directly impacted from lockdowns and so forth. And we have others that cannot find enough people. So we start to shift back and forth with different parts. So we're continuously, I am a strange person with an undergraduate degree in economics, but I also have a master's in design. So we're thinking about these from a couple of different perspectives. And the larger macro context is incredibly important, especially geography, technology, when people are hiring. And Robin, I'm sure you can speak to this, is that finding people that live in an area and remote working is changing that dynamic tremendously. So they have geographic trends, we have demographic trends, we have larger economic trends, we have different companies and countries making different investments, and everyone's competing with each other. So we follow these kinds of things really closely. And there is always a little bit of a difference between recruiting and employer brand building. One is a more longer term thinking strategy. In fact, we're not busy. So if we looked at the numbers of job lists, it should be we'd have nothing to do and twiddle our thumbs all day. The companies are taking advantage of this too, at the same time saying, okay, they can beat us up and get things a little cheaper. That happens. But also what we're seeing on the TA side, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, Robin, is people have a little bit more time to put into these projects that they wouldn't have in the kind of hustle and bustle it was 6-7 months ago. So that too has been an important factor in how people are looking at these things, because we all expect it to come back. So nobody wants to be the last one to the party. So most of our clients are saying, we'd like to be maybe not the first, but we'd love to be the second. And we're seeing a lot of increased activity around that for longer term planning, shorter term active recruiting. And they are very different strategies and different media channels that we use and different touch points that we're kind of turning off and on accordingly.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think that you have to love data and you have to love trends and capitalize it on as much as you can, and looking at it as much as you can zero in, and then as far and wide as you can look at it. So I mean, the recruitment landscape has dramatically changed over the years. You can't just post and pray, right? It's a multi-channel approach. Search is still king, and the rise of voice search, and what are companies doing about voice search, and how you can populate is, where's a great place to work in Philly, and wanting your company to come up, right? Or where's a great place to work in Germany, or wherever that might be. Social recruiting, there's so many exciting things that you can do in that space, and taking advantage of it to position your company and brand in a place that wouldn't be expected. And to that point of, hey, that's an interesting company, or I like that culture, that's interesting, I should make a point of knowing about that. And then when that candidate is ready, they will hopefully consider your company. I mean, I'm very fortunate to work at SAP, where right now we are actively hiring, and we have not stopped, given this pandemic. So we're actually really busy right now, and trying to seize the moment, because we're very fortunate to be in this position and feel lucky. But the health and safety of our employees, the health and safety of our candidates is first and foremost, and how you have to shift your strategy to go virtual. I mean, there's so many different macro and micro, the rise of GDPR and the importance of it. I mean, I just think trust, honestly, is the new currency, and the importance of having trust in your employer is so critical for the success and that responsibility that comes with it. I mean, there's so many different facets to it. Absolutely. And it's an exciting time, to your point.
Yeah, really exciting. I mean, one of the best things about kind of the chaos and the turbulence is it allows a little bit more room for invention and innovation. People are willing to take a little bit more of a creative risk or a strategic risk because there's less downside. Yeah. I'm seeing that across the board, you know.
You both like gracefully come to the final point that I wanted to send people out on are some pieces to think about moving forward. If they have if folks listening have a good handle on this, we get employee testimonials where, we're on Glassdoor, we tell a story, we find a narrative, we have an EVP. We make sure that how our organization's story, how it fits with the postings we want to have, and we make sure we know we can't post and pray. We can't just shove a job description on any job description on any job site. Instead, we have to understand a story. Are there other pieces you would want to caution folks or just encourage them to be thinking about moving forward in this category?
I can think of a couple. I don't know how much time we have left. One of the things that I look towards the future, near term and even further, is a shifting of how we think about value and how candidates and employees determine value. And that if we can start to create value for them through experiences and process. Looking for an opportunity or a job is still kind of, not very much fun. If we can create better experiences for people doing that, a little bit less from the transactional side of things, and see how we can create value through the experience of interacting, communicating. It's a little easy to say, but there's a lot of pieces that kind of make that work. And when it starts to happen, it's almost as enjoyable looking for a job as it is planning your next vacation, where you get excited about the things that you're seeing and doing and can't wait to, get there.
I mean, we got to improve the candidate experience. Let's be honest. Yeah. You could be the most talented person in the entire world, not to your fault, but you slip through the cracks, and how we can minimize that and present and make it, to your point, an enjoyable experience instead of like a not as enjoyable experience. Wholeheartedly agree. There's a lot of work to be done in that space. I think that if you're thinking about going into employer branding, and if you're going to market a company or organization, whatever that might be, you got to do your own research and make sure you truly believe in that product and that organization and can truly be authentic, because the only way you're going to succeed is being as authentic as you can. And I know when I was considering working at my employer, I did a lot of research and would highly encourage you, because I continue to see colleagues in the employer branding space of like, I joined this company because they offered me a great salary or something like that. And it's not something they believe in. And that comes through, true and true. So you have to work for a company that you truly believe in and that keeps their promise, what they offered you as an external candidate. And you see that as when you're hired within the organization.
Yeah, authenticity is everything. It goes hand in hand with empathy. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I think it's a great way to go out. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Matt, for being part of this conversation. This has been the TWID Show, a weekly interview series on building better workplaces. Today was a conversation on employer brand marketing. We'll be back next week with others. Thanks again to Robert and to Robin and Matt. We'll make sure to see you next week. Yeah.